A people searching for their path. A world getting ever closer. A celebration of a miracle. Hopefully, it's also the beginning of something more exciting to come. World Insights Special on China at its 70th anniversary. Many faces and voices. A collective memory. A world in the making. Hello and welcome to Insight China on the 70th anniversary of the founding of the PRC. The past 7 decades saw China raise the tempo. With this crescendo of development was not limited to economics. Many from China and abroad saw it as a land of untapped music potential. Chinese rock music experienced a short period of prosperity that gave birth to many rock stars from this country. Behind the scenes is an important hype man. Jia Minshu is the historical promoter of Chinese rock music, which emerged from underground. He's also the organizer of the 1994 Hong Kong Coliseum concert. Jia Minshu, together with Zhang Peiran, launched Magic Stone 3 Heroes, Dou Wei, He Yong, and Zhang Chu, set off a wave of rock music in the mainland. However, with the changes in the Chinese market and Chinese society later, rock music began to fade out of people's horizons. Yet, it comes back again now in music festivals and entertainment shows. People wonder if the golden age of Chinese rock will be repeated soon.
Honestly saying, that really a milestone at that time. We make a lot of effort to let it happen, and we want to show up to the world that see from a country. They're so the self-confidence, and they're so willing to share their music and their mind to everybody. So I think it's still me and my partner just have the determination to do that.
But what about for Dou Wei, He Yong, and the other bands and individuals that you eventually put into the 中国火 1, 2, 3?
Honestly saying, it's all the same. You see the Dou Wei, his music and the charisma is so unique. In his world, all the standard of the art. It's just the same until now.
And what about He Yong?
It's still the character of the artist. Is that he is so straight with the strong feeling, strong passion of whatever he was chasing or something, And also Zhang Chu.
Zhang Chu, of course. They are so unique in their own ways, but when put together, it's like a palette of colors of that generation. How do you think this generation musicians, compared to all the other genres, are they unique or are they very similar with one another?
I think they have the same
backdrop.
Yeah, it's they're really self-moving first, then become to a masterpiece, and so touching, because that's really a real masterpiece, real good work. If you listen back all the tracks, you can feel that.
I would say you would enjoy yourself more than 100% at that time. I mean, because you were suddenly put into an environment in which there was so much creativity going on, and they're both familiar in a way and very different. What was it like for you as a young man
from professional perspective, I think my job is a producer. So my job is to organize everything and to help the artists to make the best tracks. And you met everyone is totally different, but you have to bring up the most precious things from themselves.
How?
Because we have to communicate with heart.
At the end of the day, how did they reflect upon that performance? Is it just a moment, or is it a theme that is set for the rest of their music career?
Honestly saying that, we don't know tomorrow or future, you know. We have to get things done at this moment.
Grasp the moment, as you say.
Yeah. It's not easy to predict tomorrow or something, you know. All the musicians, all they're writing their music, they, you know, just like, you know, tide, you know, up and down. It's not easy to describe that, you know.
Are you proud of it? 25 years on. Think about it. 1994, this year, 25 years on.
I cannot say that proud. I think I'm so gratitude that a lot of people help that, and I can very focus to do my job.
Can that moment be repeated or duplicated?
I don't want to duplicate that. I was really want to do more things to help all the musicians they need.
Why you can't duplicate that? Why you don't want to? Because it obviously gives a lot of opportunity to musicians through this way.
I think the best are not yet to come, because to fulfill everything at that standard, we need a very healthy industry. Live concert, live tour is part of industry. We need a very healthy industry that to build up. We're still building, right? Just like a distribution. Now, right now, it's all digital, right? We got very excellent streaming media. So, good music need good music industry. All good music industry need good music. It's the same thing. So one must always want to do is from professional perspective. Though I'm a musician too, but I can know both of them. You know, the really relationship. You know.
Early 1990s, when everything seemed to be just starting, particularly your participation in the rock scene. How would you reflect about that moment?
With the same heart, just like the musician. I'm so passionate at that time that I can hear some friends who bring some tape or the demo to me that really touched me.
What were some of the demos that touched you at that moment? Remember the first few
ones? Yeah, I remember
ones?
The very important one is Tang Dynasty. One of my friends who gave me a tape that told me to listen to that. I heard that it's a very unique structure and very unique lyrics. But not just only a demo, you can hear the spiritual side.
I mean, at that time you were relatively fresh in Beijing, right?
I think I never heard that really from the land, you know. Yeah, the feeling about the everything they can imagine from the ancient China, and all the cultural side of things.
But how to translate the culture into a specific music, and particularly into a story that they are trying to tell about their generation, is something very challenging. Obviously, they have done something that touched your heart.
If you have the experience to listen that from a 70s music from British, you can feel the same things.
What was it?
It's like progressive rock music. They also provide that kind of feeling from their classic literature things, and also the music style. That they create new model, new type of music. They just create without any traditional. Like they got some training from classic music. They got some influence from pop music, so they create a new style.
What was it like once Tang Dynasty became successful? It's quite a successful case study. Did they, in a way, provide you with more confidence about other artists that you can discover and also be able to make them successful even commercially?
I think it's a very unique case that the song really delivered very deep of the heart that those young guys, they're feeling about China.
Have you ever wondered how could this bunch of guys would be able to come up with all of the lyrics and really the complex feeling, as you mentioned, within them?
I think when you are very focused in music, you play with your heart. We don't imagine the other things, even the result. I think it's most important things to see that we sing the very great cover song, that it's a general feeling of everyone. It's just different generation, right? And we use that the nature of our heart from years, that really shows that the experience that we who have listened all the good stuff in our experience.
But you could argue they could do the same thing now, but they would not be able to do it anymore.
I think a masterpiece more or less should be more spiritual.
What about the spiritual side of it? If you could use just a few adjectives, whether it's Tang Dynasty or that generation, if you can.
I think one is the charisma of the artist. You can everyone can see that is a fake or real, right? Another is the cultural side of things. The culture is not that like we describe that the pop culture or something. It is like a nutrition to everyone. I remember, for example, I remember one time we shooting the video, the Yellow River. Yeah, the Yellow River side. It's called Sapoto. It's a very magic place that all of us they saw the river. Their straight imagination is this is the mother. Then they want to jump in the river. You can see that's so real, Even you have a little drink. This is real feeling at that time.
Many people are asking these days the question about commercialization. Well, first of all, I'm not against commercialization, but what role is it playing in nurturing or not the younger generation or the newer generation of musicians?
From the very beginning, I was like to do a lot of things in one time. So like a production assistant and a producer, and then sometimes an engineer, and to like a concert promoter.
Yes.
It's the same thing. At that time, I would like to say that it's quite simple, because honestly saying, the industry is not yet
Developed.
but actually it's just very underdeveloped. But right now, my job is still the same, but more complicated.
One of the things people are talking about, Mr. Jia, is whether the audience still has got the guts. I mean, back in the 1990s, the ones who are fascinated by the rock music are mainly those from the universities, well-educated young people, be able to hear something new in their ears, and they feel part of the message being expressed in those music are their lives. But now, is this still possible?
In early 90s, at that moment, the whole atmosphere is so aggressive. Everyone wants to do things, try their best to get things done, and I think it's very everybody used a very positive way to see the reform and open. Or it's quite good. It's a miracle. It's so amazing to everybody, and now we have all the system, and even well developed right now. We have to see the different way of different kind of for music industry. We see the idol music. There should be good qualities idol music, right?
Yeah.
If you like folk music, it should be more good folk music. And to write all the different decays, the environment and the social,
Yes.
Yeah. So I think if you like hip hop music, it should be like more
really good stuff.
hip hop
Yes.
music. It's not like a shallow one. And it's same thing to rock music. It's same things.
From shallow to good, where are we now? What does it take to be there?
I think we have to more for those composers, for those musicians, they have to very focus on music, not on all the other things. Sure that everyone wants to be famous, that's sure, but the priority is good music. I think we need more masterpiece, more classic to let all people to enjoy that. If you are successful, that's good. But most important things from music is to comfort people. I think this is different.
What do you make of those who are still in the rock and roll music scene? That those who have been working with you, maybe from the very beginning of the 1990s, and those who already left or are having a very different kinds of lives these days?
Some musician to become a boss, some musician become a very expertise on different field. Very interesting things. And I think still there's a lot of old bands still tour in the tour.
Yes.
It's really amazing.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's such a biosystem.
Yeah.
Biodiversity.
Yes, I think the same thing is music influence everybody. That really big. Encourage you to all to every day.
When you hear great music today, usually how would you react?
I'm calm.
Really?
We hear music. For me, I heard music. Then I'm into the a judgment because of this my.
Of course, your profession.
Yeah. So I really can enjoy music for at least like 30 years.
It's such a pity, and I feel really good about that because I'm not in your profession. I can still enjoy music to the extent that I can. But for now, thank you so much, Mr. Jia.
You're welcome.
That's my interview with Jia Minshu, who was instrumental in pushing the Chinese rock music from underground in front of the eyes of many. Stay with us here on Inside China, still to come on our special program. Celebrating the 70th anniversary of the founding of the PRC, Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer Liu Heung Shing captures China's transformation from the frame to the heart. Catch that interview after this break. Welcome back. You're still watching our special program, Inside China, to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. I'm Tian Wei. Next, we bring you our exclusive interview with Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer Liu Heung Shing. Through his cameras and lens, he captures China's transformation from the frame to the heart. History is remembered not as thick tone, but a series of flashpoints. Photographers, therefore, are significant messengers, particularly when they capture a moment in time and help us form a collective memory of the history. China's reform and opening up over the past 4 decades has brought changes at a dizzying speed. Blink and you will miss it. But thanks to the works of photographers like Liu Heung Shing and his peers, the Chinese can still gauge where everything started, with all the struggles, confusion, excitement, and success frozen in time. When he first arrived in China, the Hong Kong-born Chinese-American Liu was the only Western photographer based in China. Instead of focusing on the grand schemes like his Chinese counterparts did then, he was fascinated and later well known for capturing the real lives of the Chinese and making fascinating analogies of them through visual language. I spent a Saturday morning with him in Beijing recently and was wonderfully overwhelmed by his stories through photos. You're very good at photographing young people, particularly at the very beginning of China's reform and opening up. Not just them, but also 3 gentlemen in sunglasses.
Yes.
That's quite an iconic photo.
Yes, it was taken in Yunnan province, which borders with Thailand. And one day I went down there to photograph the Water Festival, which is an annual festival of the Dai people that follows the solar calendar. And in the distance, I saw these 3 men, wandering and towards me. And I said, gee, there is this perception of Chinese look alike. And there they are, look exactly alike. So they walked towards me, and I walked towards them. And the result was that photograph.
I remember there was a photo about Beijing during the winter time. The Chinese cabbage, a whole truck of it being thrown back and forth. And certainly that is the food, the only vegetable, together with potato, that the Chinese could rely on throughout the winter, almost 4 or 5 months. And that was such a vivid photo. You could almost hear the sound of the Chinese cabbage being flied around. Yes. How did you catch that moment?
That photograph was taken, this truck just rolled down the field, and then on both sides, the people harvesting the cabbage and load it onto the truck. And I tried it myself.
Oh,
I couldn't do it. It looks
so
easy.
Easy, yeah.
But each of these cabbage weighs around 20 kilos.
Absolutely.
It's one thing to move it side by side, but to throw it up and land it properly takes a lot of skills. So, and also I love the idea that the cabbage, 4 or 5 of them in the air. Mm-hmm. It was like a symphony.
It's like a symphony and an air show.
It's a musical notes for Beijing residents at that time, and it was generally true throughout the northern China, that cabbage was the only vegetable in the regular diet that would last for 6 months. Mm. So I start noticing people were buying cabbage by literally 1,000 kilos. Mm-hmm. So I will visit Chinese people's home, in the stairway, in the corridor,
Everywhere.
in the corners of the living room, just piles with this cabbage.
Now you see the so-called street photography is so vibrant here in China.
Mm-hmm.
But people also asked about the styles. There used to be styles more influenced by the former Soviet Union, and now it seems the style have been switching, very different from their time, probably getting closer to your style, or styles of so-called Western photographers.
There's a bit of a cultural differences in this regard. Chinese people in general, they don't wear the emotion on the face, so to speak. I photograph how Chinese people laugh. There was one couple, they sit together, they chit-chat, and their legs and feet were touching each other. I think a Western photographer would do nothing for them, would pass right by that image. But many Chinese look at their photograph, they respond to it.
Right.
They say, well, this is more kind of, the Chinese word is more 含蓄, it's more
Indirect.
Indirect, it's more, you know, it's kind of not in your face. Photography does certain things very, very well, and that is to project emotion and display your empathy to people you photograph, to people you observe. And I think to do that, the photographer has to be more direct in some way. And because you can always look at a photograph, look at the subject's eyes. The eyes convey a lot of information, right? You take a portrait, how does the person sit in the portrait look at you, at your camera, tells you a lot of information. So these are the things that when perhaps outside of China people look at the photographs, books and so on, they discern there is not an immediate connection between people photographed and the photographer and those being photographed, because that conveyed to the people look at the photographs. So these are the things perhaps make this body of work, especially in that period of the early years of reform, a little bit different.
I also noticed that you follow people. You follow people into their lives, not just about one photo, but rather try to get to know what is the context of that one photo that you're taking. For example, a young lady who is wearing maybe a Dior bra or something, very fashionable, and the onlookers are all interestingly surprised, to put the list. And you followed her to her home. She also had a photo standing in the little room she had. That is a very interesting contrast about realities
Yes.
and aspirations.
Yes, and she's a very tall model. She must be about 6'2", and that photograph of her, stooping in the room, served as both the bedroom and the living room. Give us a real sense of what is daily life look like. There is this one photograph. She's in the splendor of Dior, a beautiful white bra. Is that daily lives matters. For example, every time I describe the photographs to the friends in the West, they all laugh. There was this photograph, the earliest days of Chinese woman having a plastic, surgery done, and she only had one eye done first. How come this eye is double eyelid and this eye is your original eyes? She said, well, if I have the both done, I cannot go home on a bicycle because she will be both covered, so she can't go home. And that, it says so much about China and that period of the daily life. And fast forward or backward, if you like, in 40 years, you might as well look at China of 200 years. The difference is just stark difference.
China's reform and opening up was monumental in its own sense, but in retrospect, it is also part of the global changes in progress during the 1970s and 1980s. Liu Heung Shing did not miss any of them. His photos depicting the very last days of former Soviet Union won him the Pulitzer Prize for that year. As an experienced journalist, he tried to be cool-minded when history was revealing itself in front of him. But as an individual, he was just like every one of us, overwhelmed by how fast the world transformed. In my conversation with him, we zoomed in to those stories and afterthoughts. You catch that moment. Every one of your peers was so jealous of you about that moment. Tell us, what exactly is that moment?
One day in the afternoon, I remember in the 1991, when I first arrived in Moscow, I received a call on my portable phone. In those days, our portable phone is this big because it had to be patched to AT&T in New York and come back. So I picked up the phone, and it was a call from Tom Johnson, chairman of CNN. Said, HS, are you busy this evening? I said, well, doesn't call me every day. And I said, sure, I'm available. He said, okay, meet me at 7 p.m. at Spassky Gate at the Kremlin. So I duly showed up. I didn't realize that CNN and Tom Johnson had negotiated a deal with the Kremlin, with Mr. Gorbachev, that CNN would be the first one to interview him. I was already very surprised that I was the only photographer.
Wow. You got an exclusive.
And so the time came, I said, well, my best spot would be to sit in front of the tripod and looking at Gorbachev like I look at you now. And so there was a KGB guard standing next to the cameraman. And he was benign. He was good-hearted. He said, your camera shutter would interfere with live broadcast, and please do not take any photographs. I said, fair enough. It's a very legitimate request. So as I sat in front of the tripod, I saw him reading 1 page, 2 page, and I said, oh, there's only 1 page left. And I thought to myself, when he throw down this page, that will be the end of history, so to speak. I said, how can I not do anything then? But I knew very well if I do anything earlier, it will be just a picture of the speech, or look like a press conference picture. It wouldn't go anywhere. So I said, okay, I wanted to take a big risk. I want to slow down my shutter speed to 30 of a second, because I want him to fold down the paper, and I want to see the paper's movement, because that was the moment the Soviet Union ceased to exist. That would be the end of the Soviet Union. So as he's about to throw down the last page of his speech, I pick up my camera, I made a 1 frame. Right. So just at that moment, the KGB guard threw me a punch through the tripod. And Tom Johnson was standing on the right side of Gorbachev, was communicating with me with his eyes, said, are you okay? And I said, I'm fine. So and then he gave his Mont Blanc pen to Gorbachev, and he signed his resignation. And that was the moment, the history of Soviet Union.
And you caught every second of it.
When I rushed out, I saw the red carpet of the Kremlin. I run, and I saw all the Western journalists, hundreds of them.
They're waiting.
And I rushed down to the Spassky Gate in the Red Square, and the Russian flag was going up, and the Soviet Union flag was coming down. So the next day, I guess it fronted many, many newspapers, front page around the world.
Fascinating story. That's how history happened, and photographers caught the moment. Having said that, though, you got millions of cameras around you, literally, on the street. Everybody has a mobile phone, and everybody could be the we media, as they say. What do you make of this stage the enormous amount of photography and yet the quality of the photography?
Well, according to the survey, in 2017, the world took 1.2 trillion photographs. Photograph has become part of everybody's life. Every day, they send pictures to each other. So in this era, when you're looking at the news photographs or documentaries, essays, and so on the terminal, on the gallery, it's a very different way of looking at the images when you open the newspaper or open the magazine. There are still some photographs like a Turkish child, a
Syrian
refugee child on the beach in Turkey and so on. That still startled the world, but the way photographs were used to convey the story has changed, and now out of that 1.2 trillion images, I think now a tiny fraction of it may end up in a book, may end up in a museum wall, so that the ways people appreciate photograph has changed. The way photographs are defined have also been changed.
Making records of history through his camera lens, Liu Heung Shing has won worldwide recognition. But as an individual, always with a curious mind and always ready to take on new challenges, how does he get his fix? A walk with him in one of his favorite Beijing haunts, the ancient Beihai Park, gives away the answers. You were interacting with the grandmas and the grandpas who are dancing in the park.
Yes.
Do they tell you much about the real China stories?
I think they do, very much in fact, because China that I know has moved since the late 1970s, when the reform began, from very much a collective society to now, as the ladies in the park you see, they really enjoy a much more individualistic style.
Yeah.
That they dance, they laugh, they chit-chat with their friends.
With the rhythmic music.
And the people we met, they're from Yunnan province. So, domestic travel, international travel, China has moved to a point that is unrecognizable.
This is only a very quiet and a very special corner of Beijing. And of course, this city has changed so much. Bicycles, cars, but that's on the surface. The gene in people's way of thinking, have things changed much? Where is it going?
I remember in 1978 when I first became resident of Beijing, I felt if I travel past the second ring road, I'm heading towards Hebei province. But today, as you know, China is up to 6 ring roads. I think it's very difficult to envision the speed of the development in China without understanding how the first 30 years versus the second 30 years, the first 3 decades and the second 3 decades. In fact, I think people felt they have lost time and they want to make up. And some of the things is very personal. For a lot of parents, they felt they have lost the opportunity to education, and now they're going very big time to make sure their kids are well educated. So
to catch up.
To catch up. And this is really the speed that the world are still adjusting to.
We are in this royal garden in a way, Beihai Park. The beautiful pagodas in the distance. This reminds us a lot about traditional Chinese culture in a way. On the one hand, China embraces the world. On the other hand, there's so much in China's history, just as many other civilizations, that the people now could get inspirations from. But that is also a beautiful balance. And that is also a selective process about exactly what do you get inspiration from, about what. So, HS, your thought about that? I'm sure you have been thinking about it 20 years walking around this park.
Well, Beihai Park, as you know, is used to be an imperial park of the Chinese emperors. I think in the world we talk about artificial intelligence and all this scientific breakthrough. It's very, very important for us to look back at the history and feel reassured about the merit of this civilization. At the same time, Chinese people also keep talking about how you engage with the world, how you join the world. So while you look back as a source of comfort, you must also look forward. And that's oftentimes a challenge. I think it's a challenge. I have to emphasize it's universally true.
A lot of food for thought, what you have just said. But it's a beautiful morning and the birds are singing. I don't want to delay you too much from your enjoy yourself here in Beijing. So let's go and take a look.
Please do. Let me grab my camera.
Okay, of course. That's my interview with Liu Heung Shing, the Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer, talking about China's transformation through his lens. And that is all the time we have for today, our special program, Inside China. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Inside CGTN into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Inside team, thanks for watching, and tune in again next time for Insights across China and around the world. Good night.